You're not obligated to do anything, because then the first thing that people often ask is, well, show me some magic. Because again, they're expecting Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, that you're going to snap your fingers and something is going to happen. It is a great opportunity to say, here's how we believe in my tradition that magic works. And it's all about intention. And here's how we start our days. So it's a great opportunity for an icebreaker. You will also get a lot of people who say, I don't believe in this, but there's this person I really like. Could you, or they're looking for a prosperity spell, or they're coming to you with something legitimate. And I'm not telling you these things to give you an answer, but to help you think about it and be a resource if you need to, because it's also really heartbreaking. And I've had this happen many times when somebody says, hey, I don't believe in this, but my dad is dying. Can you do something about it? And they've just moved an incredible heavy emotional burden to you. I'm saying this now because we're in a safe space and it's not really happening, but it gives you an opportunity to think about it as you want to come out and how you would respond to a random stranger, a casual friend, a close friend, a relative. And you think about, here's how we look at life and death, and it doesn't really work this way. And then you get also the ridiculous, well, turn someone into a frog for me. We don't do that kind of stuff. And it's really bad karma. And if people are curious, what's the decision that you've made? There are lots of people, I'll get to meh in a second. There are people who are really curious and go, well, tell me about it. I kind of know nothing. I had a friend who's of a particular evangelical faith and said, and she's, is in her late 30s at this point. And she said, my parents said some really bad things about pagans and witches. Tell me your side. And it gives you an opportunity to do that and to really express it in a way. So think about it. Or your answer can be, I don't mind sharing that. But, if you turned the tables and said, oh, you're a Christian. What's that like? And a lot of us came from this. I came from a Jewish background. People never ask that. It's always I always do a running joke. We live in Seattle, as I said. You meet people from Microsoft. So as an icebreaker, sometimes they say, "Oh, what does Microsoft do?" And everybody sort of knows what they do and are, but it's a great way to break some tension. So think about it. Do you want to come out fast or slow? Do you want to say, "Hey, look, I'm part of an earth-based religion and we do this," or, "Hey, I'm going to go and spend Earth Day coming up on the 22nd in a park." And that's one way to ease people into it. Or you come out and you say, "Look, these are my beliefs." Meh is meh. They're sort of like, I don't really care. But if there's somebody who's important to you in your life, how are you going to feel about that? You tell someone you have a new job and they go, oh, that's nice. You tell someone there's something that's deeply personal, trying to get you set up and prepared for how you'd ask that questions. Yeah, when the people send you the turn them into a frog question, it's always I don't necessarily think you have to know the person and the circumstance. You don't always want to make it into a joke, but you do want to be able to have a way to deflect and say, well, this is how magic works about intention and how we do spells. So you can look at it as sort of a teaching and learning opportunity. Oh, I apologize. I will type that in later. Um, you can be partly in and you can be partly out. If you're partly in, again, it's your choice. When you're in a work environment and you have rights issues, we'll talk about what that means. Lifestyles. Pagans, hey, I've heard that all pagans are promiscuous. Have you ever heard that before? Most of you aren't on video anymore, but it's a thing. Um, be prepared for those questions. There's a lot of polyamory in the community. We're certainly extremely open, right? All acts of love and pleasure are my ritual. So we find people across the spectrum, and I use that pun intended, of lifestyle choices, partner choices, families of choice. Those questions will come up, how you want to discuss them. And if you have questions about that, drop them in the chat or just start asking. I'm happy to talk about it, but I also want to get through some more of these slides. But those are really important things. So some of the things that we talk about, right? I've said these first two over and over again. Something that I think is extremely important, and some traditions have moved away from this, some covens have moved away from this, a year and a day. I understand that it's a neo-pagan and more new thing, but I think it's an extremely important way before you're accepted into a coven, before you move into this. It gives you time to think about it, because there's obviously a lot of pop culture glitz and glam. There's some YouTubers who are really big personalities, excuse me, who make everything look attractive and appealing. And there was that horrible article that was written, I spent a week as a witch, and here's what I learned. You can't spend a week as anything and learn very much about it. So those are the things that you can do. Why do you have an altar? And lots of people have altars in their homes. It's a great learning opportunity to talk about it. There's a knife. You have an athame. Athame, pick your pronunciation, pointing out that, again, pun intended, that it's not sharp. It is there for channeling. It is a tool, is a great understanding, because one of the first things they think is, oh my God, you're going to cut somebody. You're going to sacrifice somebody. Do you do blood stuff? It's a teaching opportunity. Talking about Sabbats and moons the pagans is promiscuous. When I was a baby witch a very long time ago, that was something that was asked. And again, it's in pop culture, the sexy witch. Every Halloween costume is either the hideously deformed witch or the sexy witch, which means that you're trolling for, and starting with, we're a sex positive religion, all people hear is sex. They stop hearing after that and their mind goes somewhere else. So those are questions that you may get asked. Talk about Sabbats and moons. We have 8 holidays in the Neo-Wiccan tradition. They follow the agrarian cycle and they make perfect sense. And you'll find them in many traditions, right? You've got 2 solstices. You've got a longest night. You've got a shortest night, or a longest day. What do those mean, and how do we celebrate them? And why do we enjoy following the cycles of the moon? Hey, do we have any, and again, I'm not live with you, so it falls a little flat. Are there any women in this group?
Of course.
Do you know anything about the cycles of the moon? And you know, it's sort of astounding sometimes. It's like, there are lunar cycles, and in the US and in many places, it's really taboo to talk about lunar cycles. Well, guess what? 49.9% of the world's population, according, and I looked this up yesterday for another pagan friend, are women. Women have lunar cycles. Did you know? And the fact that we can acknowledge it and that men can freely talk about it without being emasculated or whatever, it's not a terrible thing. And so wheels within wheels, why do we look at different cycles? And it's, again, a discussion opportunity. The difference between a witch and a pagan. And again, this is Lawrence's definition. So if you disagree with it, please do. And please do ask questions. You know, witchcraft is the actual working and in the mechanics. And you can be of many different traditions. You can be a witch and not a pagan. And I'm sure everybody in this group knows it, but sometimes I've got other folks who come to these talks. You can be a pagan and not a witch. Paganism is the actual worship of the deities, of a tradition, of a belief system, and witchcraft is the way that I look at it, is the workings. And on the right, I've got a couple of symbols. Generally, when I start the introduction, especially in the business community, I will take out my triple goddess. I've got 5 different necklaces. Yeah, maybe I have a little obsession. This is the Star of Inanna. And take that out and explain it. Why do we have a tree? Why are trees sacred to us? Why is the triple goddess, the triple moon sacred? Workspace beliefs. And again, I'll reiterate, A, I am not an HR professional. Do not take this as legal advice. B, this only applies in the US. So if you're viewing from outside the US, please do take this with the mindset that it's only for the US. Your country's rules, laws may be very different. Religions are a protected class. Paganism is a religion. Witchcraft is not. And what does that mean? So whether you belong to a traditionally recognized religion, one of the big 5, the Abrahamic faith, Buddhism, it's also for people who have devout, ethical, or moral beliefs that are stated. And I will come back to that. The harassment and the issues that come with that are being marginalized, or hey, I'd like to take off, instead of taking off for these holidays, I would like to be able to take off for my Sabbaths. And many companies now have flex policies, but you've got to be out about it and explain a little bit why. Because companies are allowed, and you are allowed to ask for reasonable adjustments. A reasonable adjustment might be swapping one holiday for another. It might be, depending on your faith, you may choose or be required to wear a head covering and no one else in your work environment does. But if that head covering would potentially pose a safety risk or some other kind of risk, then there is a question about it. Very recently, there was a case in the US military where someone who was Asatru was allowed to grow a beard because of their faith. But it is only sincerely held beliefs that entitle you to those. So if you come in and go, I am really a very devout worshiper of purple jelly beans. And in my faith, the purple jelly bean does, represents all these things. We're not allowed to eat them on certain days. Other days we have to binge on them. And I know that's kind of a ridiculous thing, but either you're in or you're out. So if you come in one day and people are cracking wise about witches and making what you would consider to be extremely offensive remarks, and maybe offensive remarks that are directed towards you because you haven't openly stated that you're pagan or witch, but it's like, you know, those tattoos you've got, you know, it makes you look like a devil worshiper, a this, a that. And directly attacking you is harassment. But it doesn't count as harassment unless you've made it clear, maybe on your employment form, which you're not allowed to ask anymore, or in casual conversations that you were a witch or pagan. And around that, absolutely fine to share your beliefs. What's not fine is to say, you know, we're morally superior. We are better because we do this, we don't do that. We follow nature, and you should too. And here's why. And we've had cases where, in other faiths, where people have come in and said, here's the way you should be raising your children. And those have been enforced on communities. Set your own examples, not others. Do not borrow from someone else's faith and try and use, well, in this religion we do talk about yourself. Here are my beliefs. And it's part of a tradition called, you know, paganism. It's been a family tradition. My mother, my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, my great-great-grandmother were all witches. And they came from Italy. They came from Croatia. They came from wherever. Or these are the faiths that I've followed. Know your company's policies and culture. Maybe they don't like you talking about personal things. If it is, and there are certain large stores in the US that have very deeply held religious beliefs by their founders. There is something called, for healthcare, women's religious contraceptive exemption. So it means that even if you have health care, your company can say, it is against our religious values, so it works both ways, to provide contraceptives for our employees. Therefore, please do not pay for them. And that is valid. So understanding those things, and when you're explaining or asking, or people are asking questions, make sure that you either say it all or not at all, because people generally tend to say no about things that they don't understand. And if you start talking about esoteric traditions or initiation, you can imagine where their mind goes. There's also the point of not being too explicit. Beltane is coming, and maybe we'll be out of lockdown. How many of you are going greenwooding on Beltane? Be honest, raise your hands. How many of you know what greenwooding is? Alan's smiling. So greenwooding is when you take your partner after you've done, and it's fertility time. And I'll leave it at that. You're all smart pagans, and this is being broadcast where young ears can hear it. Mm-hmm. You don't need to be super explicit or inappropriate. But if people have legitimate questions, rock on, go answer them. But what I'm trying to do is help you think about what you're going to do. So enough said about the workplace. And again, interrupt with, yes, Michael, that is exactly what I was talking about. Conflict, don't avoid it. Because what will end up happening is it will continue to build, whether it's in the family or somewhere else, but think about reasonably how you want to do this. You either disengage and say, you know, I've made some lifestyle choices and I'm not ready to talk about them. And if these people are really your friends, family, they will respect that. And you can set a time and a date and agree it with them. Don't get super defensive about stuff either. People will come and go, oh my God, you're one of them? Are you going to leave and move out? People will feel, because of what they've heard, they generally are caring They may be genuinely afraid for you, or they think they're going to lose you. You're going to move someplace away from them, or you're not going to want to associate with them. Honor and respect those feelings. What you choose to do with them, how you process them, is up to you. Don't overgeneralize. Witches are just great people. I mean, geez, and everybody is an amazing artist, right? I'm looking at these names. I know a lot of you. We've got at least one kick-ass guitar player. Got his attention. And, you don't need to overgeneralize, be right. You know this, but in the heat of the moment, when somebody starts going, your people do this, and then you turn around and said, you've got a 2,000-year history of A, B, C, D. Don't do it. Rise above, take whatever metaphor, go meditate, take a walk, disengage, watch their body language. People do religion, right? You've heard the expression religious arguments. Don't get into it. Watch that body language and know, especially if you're outnumbered, you've got a lot of people, especially if it's family, and they're all going to come down on you, and you're not in an emotional state to do something about that, just to be able to deal with it. It's a family event, it's at a funeral, whatever, be there. When you're talking to family and friends, be prepared, don't over-prepare. If it was Lawrence, I'd come with a 60-page PowerPoint. Sad but true, I'm slightly left brain, for those of you who know me, and it would have lots of graphics, not unlike this one. When you're talking to people, do not, and this is the only thing I'm going to tell you, do not start with, I don't worship the devil. I guarantee you, devil and Satan are the only words they will hear. There are many different ways to start. Say, Earth First Religion, I want to tell you about my faith. We don't worship the devil. The devil is an invention of these particular faiths. That is the only word they will take. What will you do when they just stare at you? You know these people, you know how they react. Think about how you've managed that situation before. Think about how you want to manage it now. Sharing it with friends should be the same. Emphasize the positive. Go back to before I became a witch, I had to wait a year and a day because everybody assumes that some nice looking person came to you, you found a book and said, I'm a witch, I'm a pagan, I'm a priestess, I'm a priest. Consider that you may be the first pagan, and my friend that I was telling you about earlier was the first pagan she'd ever met that she knew was pagan. And, and again, I'm lucky to be out and be able to be out. Put yourself in their frame of mind so that you can have a successful outcome. And what do you want that outcome to be when you're done with this discussion? You probably are not trying to proselytize them. You're probably trying to make them understand the choices and lifestyle things that you're doing. And like I said, there's a fear they may lose you, they won't get to hang out with you. It may be even deeper than that, regret. You may, make sure that you have and finish these discussions as fast as possible. That may be over a day, a week, a month, but if someone passes and you've broken that relationship, you or they may feel some pretty deep regret. And again, I'm giving you some things and tools to think about. New partners. And I have literally not had the first one where someone's asked it to me, but someone has said, and I had to help them answer it, is, did you make me fall in love with you? This person is genuinely requesting and questioning a relationship with you. So it sounds funny, but again, you see popular media and maybe they've had doubts, or maybe they're just crazy in love with you. And now suddenly popular media has put it into their head that there's something wrong here. Set your mood with intentions. Set up the room wherever you're going to do it. Maybe you want to take a walk with them out in nature. Provide some examples. Maybe the best place to have that conversation with your parents or your siblings is that kitchen table that you grew up sitting around and having family conversations with a cocoa, or maybe it's a beer now. Set up the room for success. Respect the fact that they have feelings, and you might be really surprised. You might think they're going to be all in or all out. Maybe they will come to you. I've been told, I've been very pleased that since I came out, I've spoken with a number of people sort of in my community locally and other parts of the world who said they felt that it was okay for them to come out as a pagan or a witch because they saw me do it. And this person might come out, and I was literally in a board meeting, and we were looking to acquire a company, and the CEO brought me into a room, and I thought he wanted to negotiate. And he said, I need to tell you something. My partner, who's the chief marketing officer, is a shamanic druid. And I'd very much like for the two of you to talk, and I'd very much like for you to buy our company. Go in with positive intentions, be very clear about things. Setting aside space in your space for your space, or if you've got altars, if you've got places that are important and sacred to you in your home, whatever they are, respect that. And then PAFO, you've got your patron, ancestors, familiars, others who are hanging on about your house and about your person. I'm going to guess that each and every one of us has maybe one or more of each of these. Have a conversation with them as well when you have a new partner. May give you perspective, may give you advice, insight, and you certainly don't want to surprise it on them either, right? Especially, I do not at present have a familiar or a fur baby that lives with me, but you also want to set them up for success as well, right? You want to, whatever your relationship is, you want to have that conversation. Visible symbols. Sometimes you ease people into it. Vesca Pisces, Yahweh, Mjolnir. Everybody kind of knows Mjolnir now from the Marvel movies. And there was a case 2.5, 3 years ago of some child in an elementary school who wore the Mjolnir because it was his family tradition, going back multiple generations. They were Swedish, that, or at least one of the parents was, that, and he wore it to school. And not only did the students ridicule him, but the teacher did as well, that it was made up. It was all fantasy, that it was never real. And that's ignorance. It's just in it, you know, something to think about. And you've got to figure it out for your beliefs. maybe you don't wear a lot of personal jewelry, maybe you don't wear it out, maybe you don't have exposed tattoos. I have when the weather is warm. One of my tattoos is unrecognizable. The key, except for a few people like Ed, and the key is, maybe a few people will. Also, just watch out about accidentally outing others, because when you see these, I was in a grocery store, and and as I said, I'm president of Pagan Pride. I kind of like to acknowledge other pagans when I see them. And this woman had, bare shoulders and a very large pentacle on her shoulder and a triple moon below it. And I looked over and I smiled and I said, "Marry me." And she fled. I mean, she literally turned and ran, because I think I felt like I outed her. And I don't think I was being flirtatious, but be sensitive to the fact that when you do see it and you make eye contact with someone or you say something, and in hindsight, I should have probably looked at it, smiled, and maybe shown, some of my symbols. And sometimes less is more. Trying to go into a long explanation with a lot of people does not work. And so, that's a thing. So I've got 2 more slides. One of them is a recap. Let me just pause for a second. What's the question about the tattoo? If you want to come off mute, please go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
Question. It was that the tattoo.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the tattoo have outed her?
Well, I think that the pentacle, yes. The triple moon, a lot of people have seen it, and I've actually seen it in different places. Not everybody would recognize it, and I thought that it would be a nice thing to do, but it seemed to really upset her. And maybe it was just the particular thing where someone had made some other comment to her that wasn't, wonderful. Any other questions?
Well, maybe she thought she was getting the Jewish star for her tattoo and didn't realize the difference.
I would hope not, because that would be super disappointing to me. I know I covered a lot of topics, and usually I do this over an hour and a half. And like I said, walking around, I've got a whiteboard. All right, I'll go on to this. And, here is a bit of trivia. Oops. Oh, that's why. I spoiled it. Everybody recognize this? I can't hear you. I'm going to assume this is the Bluetooth symbol. So everybody who's got a mobile phone, multiple mobile devices, it is a great way to connect. So when people say, "Oh, well, there's no witchcraft, people don't do this," there's symbols all around us. But this one is a bind rune. And I'm going to guess that most folks here know what a bind rune is. And this is actually on the Bluetooth website. So the link is here. I'll provide the deck to Ed or some of the other Corellian folks that can be shared. But the bind rune it really is a magical implementation, setting an intention of transformation, rebirth. It is a way to communicate. It is a new way to bring information forward. So it's one of those interesting little examples that you can provide to people about magic being all around us without it being, aha, there's a little demon, or there's a little spirit, or there's a fae living in your phone. just a quick recap, go with your gut and your level of comfort. No one is forcing you to come out. Do it at your own pace. Do it how you feel is the right thing. Try not to have to be right. If you're being defensive or you feel like you've got something to prove, you may be getting into an argument. Maybe it's with a stranger, but it may be a loved one. And you want to consider, their feelings, your feelings. And again, what's your goal as to how you want this to end? You want them to say, I'm really glad, I respect your beliefs, I don't believe them, but if it's making you happy, then I'm happy. And that should be the answer you get, right? Spoiler, they should be happy for you that you found something spiritual and moving for you. My personal advice is be in or out. You can show lifestyle things, but if you are in a position where you could potentially be marginalized, then you need to be very out. You don't have to be loud about it. I'm a witch, I wear a hat, carry a broom, whatever. But these are my beliefs, this is who I am. And if people do have issues, that's fine. If there are discriminatory things, then you do have a case, and less is more until people really start asking you. Because if you start droning on about the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram without any context, no one is going to get that. And even though the words themselves may be things that they understand, putting them all together is going to be a head scratcher for a lot of people. You've all been awesome. Thank you for spending an hour with me. Any questions before we wrap up? Anything you want to do, and I will put my contact information, easy to get me, on Twitter, WeChat, Telegram. All right, I'll let you all go, and thank you. Thank you again to the tradition for allowing me this time and getting us all set together. Merry meet, merry part, merry meet again.
And blessings.
Blessings.
Thank you, Lawrence. You did a great job.
Thank you.
All right, and for those who want to know, this will be up on later on other pieces of the internet later on today. Over the next few days, we'll get all of it up.
Awesome.